The listing said, room for rent in charming Craftsman, Queen Anne neighborhood. $950 per month, utilities included. Must love old houses. It was still ridiculously expensive, but it was Seattle, after all, and cheaper than anything else I'd seen that wasn't a literal closet or a cozy basement with 5 other roommates. The photos showed gleaming hardwood floors, built-in bookshelves, and windows that actually let in light. After 2 weeks of searching, it felt like finding water in a desert. I tapped out a quick response. Hi, I'm interested in the room. I'm 26, male, non-smoker, work as a graphic designer. Recently relocated for work. Available to view the room anytime this week. The reply came within the hour. Available to show the house tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. Michael Harrington. Brief and to the point. I like that. I had enough of Seattle's passive-aggressive communication style already. The house looked even better in person. A classic 2-story Craftsman painted a deep blue with white trim, set back from the street behind a small garden. The sort of place I'd always imagined living someday when I was established and successful, not as a fresh transplant from California with student debt and a new job. I straightened my jacket and knocked. Footsteps approached, and then the door swung open. Jamie Chen? The man was tall, with salt and pepper hair cut in a style that was probably fashionable 15 years ago. Lines around his eyes suggested he was in his mid-40s. He wore jeans and a gray sweater that looked expensive in that subtle way that only truly expensive things can. Yes, Mr. Harrington? Thanks for seeing me. I extended my hand, which he shook firmly. Michael is fine. Come in. The interior was even more impressive. Original woodwork everywhere, a stone fireplace, built-ins galore, all meticulously maintained. Either he was wealthy or an extremely dedicated DIY type. Given the cashmere sweater, I was betting on the former. The house was built in 1912, he explained as he led me through. I've spent the last 15 years restoring it. Probably should have been easier to sell it and start fresh, but... He trailed off, something complicated passing across his face before he continued. I'm rather attached to it. It's beautiful, I said sincerely. You've done amazing work. Something in his expression softened slightly. Thank you. Most people ask why I didn't just modernize everything. That would be criminal. The words slipped out before I could filter them. He actually smiled then, briefly, but it transformed his serious face. I think we'll get along fine. Let me show you the room. We climbed a beautiful staircase to the second floor. Michael pointed out the shared bathroom, original hex-tile floor, restored clawfoot tub, before opening the door to what would be my room. It was larger than I expected, with a bay window overlooking the street, more of that gorgeous woodwork and simple but quality furniture, a queen-size bed, a desk, and a dresser that looked antique. My daughter picked out the bedding before she left for college, he explained, gesturing to the dark blue comforter. But feel free to change it if it's not to your taste. So that explained the room. Empty nest syndrome. I wondered about Mrs. Harrington, but didn't ask. It's perfect, I said instead. And it was far better than I'd hoped for. The kitchen is shared, of course. I'm not home much, so you'll have it to yourself most evenings. Laundry's in the basement. I have a cleaning service come every other week for the common areas. He paused. I should mention that I work from home 2 days a week. I have an office on the first floor. That's fine, I assured him. I'll be at the design studio most days. He nodded, apparently satisfied. Any questions for me? I had several, mostly about why a man who clearly didn't need the money was renting out a room in his beautiful home. But instead I asked about lease terms, internet speed, and parking. 6-month minimum, excellent fiber connection, street parking with a permit he'd helped me acquire. When would you want to move in? He asked as we headed back downstairs. As soon as possible. I'm in an Airbnb that's bleeding me dry. He nodded. I could have the paperwork ready tomorrow if you're interested. Definitely interested, I said quickly, worried someone would swoop in and take this unicorn of a rental. Good. He hesitated in the foyer. I should be transparent about why I'm renting the room. He seemed uncomfortable, which immediately made me nervous. My wife, ex-wife now, and I divorced last year. My daughter left for UCLA 6 weeks ago. The house is too quiet. He met my eyes directly. I'm not looking for a friend or a replacement family member. Just someone to fill some of the empty space. I respect privacy and expect the same. I nodded, relieved it wasn't something weirder. I understand completely. I'm pretty quiet, and I'm still trying to establish myself at the new job. I won't be throwing parties or anything. Then I think this will work out well. He extended his hand again. Welcome to Queen Anne, Jamie. As I walked back to my car, I couldn't believe my luck. A gorgeous room in an amazing house in one of Seattle's best neighborhoods, with a landlord who explicitly didn't want to be friends. Perfect. I had no idea how completely wrong I was. Moving in took less than an hour. The sum total of my Seattle possessions fit in my Honda Civic. Michael helped carry the heaviest box up the stairs, made sure I had the Wi-Fi password, then retreated to his office with a reminder that I could text if I needed anything. That first week, we barely saw each other. True to his word, Michael was gone most days, and when he was home, he stayed in his office or bedroom. I caught glimpses of him in the kitchen occasionally, making coffee or a sandwich, and we exchanged polite nods, but that was it. It should have been ideal. The house was peaceful, the commute to my job was manageable, and I had the space and privacy to work on my portfolio in the evenings. So why did I feel so lonely? Maybe it was Seattle itself, the famous freeze that made it hard for newcomers to break into established social circles. Maybe it was the constant rain that had started in early October. Or maybe it was just that I'd left behind everything familiar for a job that, while creatively fulfilling, was more demanding than I'd anticipated. Whatever the reason, I found myself lingering in the kitchen longer than necessary, hoping for some human interaction beyond my coworkers. Which is how I ended up making far too much pasta on a Friday night when I heard Michael come in the front door. "Smells good," he commented as he passed the kitchen. Before I could overthink it, I called out, "I made too much. You're welcome to some if you're hungry." He paused, clearly surprised by the offer. There was a moment where I thought he might refuse, maintaining the careful distance he'd established, but then his shoulders relaxed slightly. "That's very kind. Let me just wash up." When he returned, I had 2 plates of pasta on the table, along with a bottle of red wine I'd been saving for a special occasion. This wasn't special exactly, but it felt like a small victory to have actual company for dinner. "I hope you like spicy food," I said as he sat down. "I tend to be heavy-handed with the red pepper flakes." "I do, actually." He poured us each a glass of wine and raised his slightly. "To new beginnings." An oddly sentimental toast from someone who'd made it clear he wasn't looking for connection, but I tapped my glass against his. "New beginnings." We ate in silence for a few minutes before I worked up the courage to make conversation. "So, you're an architect?" He looked surprised. "How did you know?" "Educated guess. The books in your office, the drafting table, the fact that you restored this house yourself." He smiled slightly. "Detective work." "Yes, I have my own small firm. Mostly residential renovation and historically sensitive additions. Nothing glamorous." "That sounds fascinating, actually. I almost studied architecture before switching to design." "Why the switch?" He seemed genuinely curious. I shrugged. "I liked the creative aspects but not the engineering and technical details. Plus, architecture school is brutal." "It is that," he agreed, taking a sip of wine. "But rewarding. What kind of design do you do?" The conversation flowed surprisingly easily after that. Michael wasn't exactly warm, but he was thoughtful and articulate, asking perceptive questions about my work and offering insights from his own career that were actually helpful. By the time we finished the bottle of wine, I learned that he'd grown up in Seattle, studied at MIT, and returned to help care for his mother, who'd since passed away. What he didn't discuss was his ex-wife or daughter, and I didn't ask. Everyone has their boundaries, As he helped me clear the dishes over my protests, he said, "This was unexpected but pleasant." "Thank you. Any time," I replied, meaning it more than I had anticipated. He nodded and retreated to his office, our brief moment of connection complete. But something had shifted, however slightly. The house felt a little less empty. Over the next few weeks, a pattern emerged. We'd occasionally share dinner, sometimes planned, sometimes spontaneous. He showed interest in my design projects, offering gentle critiques that were actually helpful. I asked about his renovations, genuinely impressed by his knowledge and craftsmanship. I learned to read his moods, when he needed space, when he was open to company. He learned that I was always up for trying new restaurants, and that I made terrible coffee but excellent cocktails. Small details exchanged carefully, like we were both afraid of overstepping. "Do you have plans for Thanksgiving?" he asked casually one evening in mid-November as we washed dishes side by side. "Not really," I admitted. "Flying home to California seemed excessive for just a few days, and I haven't made enough friends here yet to score an invitation." He nodded, focused intently on drying a pot. "I usually have a small dinner. Just me and a few friends. You'd be welcome to join." The invitation surprised me. It felt like crossing a line we'd both been careful to maintain. "Are you sure? I don't want to intrude on your traditions." "It's hardly an intrusion when I'm inviting you." He set the pot down carefully. "But no pressure, just an option." "Then yes, thank you. I'd like that." He nodded, satisfied. "Good. My friend Ellen always brings terrible cranberry sauce that no one eats. I'll warn you in advance." I laughed. "Noted. I make a pretty mean pumpkin pie, if that will be helpful." "Perfect. My daughter—" He stopped abruptly, something flashing across his face. "We always have pumpkin pie." It was the first time he'd mentioned his daughter directly, and I could see the loss was still raw. I wanted to ask about her, but sensed it wasn't the time. "Then pumpkin pie it is," I said lightly. He excused himself shortly after, retreating to his bedroom earlier than usual. I sat alone in the kitchen, wondering about the man who owned this beautiful house, who kept his pain so carefully contained, who had unexpectedly invited me into a small corner of his life, despite his initial boundaries. Thanksgiving proved to be a turning point. Michael's friends, Ellen with her indeed terrible cranberry sauce, a gay couple named David and Marcus who bickered lovingly about cooking techniques, and a quietly elegant woman named Catherine who turned out to be Michael's sister, welcomed me warmly. There were moments of laughter, good food, and genuine conversation. I caught Michael watching me sometimes, a thoughtful expression on his face that I couldn't quite decipher. As everyone was leaving, Catherine pulled me aside. "I'm glad Michael has company in that big house," she said, her eyes kind but assessing. "It's been a rough year for him." "He doesn't talk much about it," I said carefully. "He wouldn't. Michael has always carried his burdens alone." She squeezed my arm gently. "But he seems lighter today." "Thank you for that." After everyone left, Michael and I cleaned up in companionable silence. The house felt different, warmer somehow, as if the laughter and conversation had seeped into the walls. "Your friends are lovely," I said as I wrapped leftover turkey. "Especially Catherine. She's always been my biggest supporter." He smiled slightly. "Even when I don't deserve it." Siblings are good that way. I thought of my own sister, always ready with unwanted but necessary advice. "Is she older or younger?" 2 years younger, but she's always been the wiser one." He hesitated. "She likes you." "I'm glad." I wasn't sure why this mattered, but it did. "My turn to ask a personal question," he said, surprising me. "Why Seattle? It's not exactly the easiest place to move to, especially alone." I considered how much to share. "The job, primarily. Horizon Design is doing work I really admire. But also, I needed a fresh start." I focused on wrapping a pie plate in foil. I was in a relationship that ended badly. San Francisco felt too small afterward. "I understand that feeling," he said quietly. Our eyes met briefly, An acknowledgement of shared experience despite the differences in our circumstances. Something shifted in that moment, a deepening of trust, perhaps, or the beginning of a genuine friendship. After Thanksgiving, the careful distance we maintained began to dissolve. We still respected each other's privacy, but we no longer seemed to be avoiding connection. We started watching documentaries together on Sunday evenings, debating architectural styles and design trends. He showed me his current projects, I shared my portfolio and asked for his opinion. One rainy Saturday in December, I came downstairs to find him struggling with Christmas decorations. "Need help?" I offered, catching a strand of lights that threatened to fall. "If you don't mind," he said, looking somewhat embarrassed. "Evelyn, my daughter, usually does this part. I'm not particularly skilled at decorating." "Happy to help." I untangled the lights. "Tell me about Evelyn." He seemed surprised by the direct question, but answered readily. "She's 19, studying marine biology at UCLA. Brilliant, stubborn, compassionate to a fault." His expression softened with pride. "She'll be home for Christmas break next week." "That's great. Will she mind that her room has been taken over?" "She's staying in the guest room downstairs. We discussed it before I listed the rental." He handed me the star for the top of the tree. "She's excited to meet you, actually. Says I need more friends my own age." I laughed. "I'm hardly your own age." "Close enough, according to a 19-year-old's perspective." He smiled, but there was something careful in his expression. "I hope you'll feel comfortable while she's here. This is your home too, now." "Your home too." The words warmed me more than they should have. "I look forward to meeting her," I said sincerely. We spent the rest of the afternoon decorating, Michael sharing stories about Christmases past, about the traditions he and Evelyn maintained even after the divorce. I found myself watching him more than the decorations, the way his face animated when he talked about his daughter, the gentleness with which he handled ornaments that clearly held sentimental value. That evening, as we sat in the living room admiring our work, Michael brought out 2 glasses and a bottle of aged whiskey. "A small thank you," he explained, pouring us each a measure. "This is usually a difficult day for me." I accepted the glass. "Because of the divorce?" He nodded. "Rebecca, my ex-wife, and I always decorated together. It was one of the few traditions we maintained even when things were falling apart." He took a sip of whiskey. 3 years ago today, she told me she was leaving." "I'm sorry," I said, unsure what else to offer. "Don't be. It was a long time coming." He stared into his glass. 20 years is a long time to realize you've built a life with someone you don't really know anymore." "What happened?" I asked, then immediately backtracked. "Sorry, that's too personal." "It's all right." He settled back in his chair. "The simple version is that we married young, had Evelyn even younger, and grew in different directions. By the time we recognized it, we were essentially strangers living in the same house." He smiled sadly. "She's much happier now, living in Portland with a yoga instructor named Tara." That was unexpected. "Oh. Indeed." He raised an eyebrow at my expression. "Life is full of surprises." "Did you know, before she told you, that she was attracted to women?" He considered this. "I think I knew something fundamental was missing between us. But no, I didn't predict that particular revelation." He refilled our glasses. "Your turn. What happened in San Francisco?" "Fair enough." I took a fortifying sip of whiskey. "His name was Alexei. We lived together for 3 years. I thought we were happy." I traced the rim of my glass. "Turned out he'd been cheating for most of that time. With one of my friends, actually." "That's brutal," Michael said quietly. "I'm sorry." "Like you said, I'm happier now." I gestured around us. "New city, new job, new home." "New friends," he added, raising his glass slightly. I tapped mine against it. "New friends." We sat in comfortable silence after that, watching the tree lights reflect in the window against the backdrop of Seattle's winter darkness. I felt a strange contentment, sitting there with this man who was no longer just my landlord, but not quite definable as anything else either. Evelyn arrived the following week in a whirlwind of energy and laughter that transformed the house. She was tall like her father, with the same thoughtful eyes, but where Michael was reserved, she was expressive, talking with her hands, laughing readily, filling rooms with her presence. "So you're the mysterious tenant," she said the first time we met, assessing me with friendly curiosity. "Dad says you're a designer?" "Graphic designer, yes." I extended my hand, which she ignored in favor of a quick hug. "We're practically roommates. Handshakes are too formal." She grinned at her father, who was watching us with a mixture of amusement and something else I couldn't quite identify. "Dad failed to mention you were cute." "Evelyn," Michael warned, though without real heat. "What?" "I'm just making an observation." She winked at me. "I'm going to unpack. Don't let Dad bore you with architectural history while I'm gone." As she bounded upstairs, Michael sighed. "She gets her subtlety from her mother." "I like her," I said honestly. "She's refreshing." "She's exhausting," he countered, but his smile was fond. "Fair warning, she'll interrogate you thoroughly before her visit is over." He wasn't wrong. Over the next few days, Evelyn questioned me about everything from my design philosophy to my dating history. I found I didn't mind. Her interest seemed genuine rather than invasive, and her quick wit made even personal questions feel like part of a friendly exchange rather than an inquisition. What I hadn't expected was how clearly she'd watched the dynamics between her father and me. "You guys have a weird vibe," she announced one evening as the three of us prepared dinner together. "Like, not bad weird. Just interesting." "We do not have a vibe," Michael replied, focused on chopping vegetables. "We have a mutually respectful living arrangement." She rolled her eyes at me. "He's so emotionally constipated. Has he always been this bad?" "I'm standing right here," Michael protested. "I know, Dad. That's why I'm asking Jamie instead of you." She grinned mischievously. "So? Is he always this repressed?" "Your father is?" I searched for the right words, aware of Michael listening despite his pretense of focusing on dinner. "Reserved but thoughtful. He respects boundaries." "Diplomatic answer," she approved. "But seriously, has he talked to you at all? About anything real?" "Evelyn," Michael's voice held a warning now. "That's enough." She raised her hands in surrender. "Fine, fine. I just worry about you, Dad. This house is too big for one person and their well-behaved tenant." The comment lingered after she left the kitchen, making the space between Michael and me feel charged with something unspoken. "I apologize for my daughter," he said finally. "She's concerned I'm becoming a recluse." "Are you?" I asked lightly. He glanced at me, surprised by the direct question. "Perhaps, but I'm working on it." 2 nights before Christmas, Evelyn announced she was staying at a friend's house overnight, giving us a pointed look that I didn't quite understand before she left. The house felt oddly empty without her energy, though we'd lived without it for months before her arrival. Michael built a fire in the living room fireplace, and I made hot chocolate with a splash of the peppermint schnapps Evelyn had brought home. We sat in our usual chairs, watching the flames in comfortable silence. "She likes you," Michael said eventually. "Evelyn, she's not usually so open with new people." "I like her too. You've raised an amazing daughter." He smiled, the firelight softening the lines around his eyes. "She's the best thing I've ever done." He paused. "She thinks I should date." The statement caught me off guard. "Oh?" "She has a colleague of Rebecca's in mind, a literature professor." He stared into the fire. "I told her I'm not interested." "Not ready?" I asked carefully. "That's what she assumes." He turned to look at me directly. "The truth is more complicated." Something in his gaze made my heart beat faster. I set down my mug slowly. "Complicated how?" He seemed to be choosing his words with extreme care. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since Rebecca left. About why our marriage failed. About what I actually want." He took a deep breath. At 45, I'm a bit old for sexual identity crises, but here we are. My mind raced to catch up with what he seemed to be saying. Here we are, I echoed, not trusting myself with more words. I should probably have had this conversation before you moved in, he continued, his voice steady despite the weight of his admission. But I didn't have the clarity then that I do now. And what clarity is that? I asked, my throat suddenly dry. That I've spent most of my life trying to fit into the role I thought I was supposed to play. Husband, father, provider. His eyes held mine. I don't regret any of it, especially Evelyn, but there was always something missing, something I couldn't articulate until recently. The tension between us had shifted into something electric, charged with possibility. Michael, I said carefully, are you telling me what I think you're telling me? He smiled slightly. That depends on what you think I'm saying. That you might be attracted to men. I swallowed hard. That you might be attracted to me. Yes to the first. Very much yes to the second. His directness surprised me. But I understand if that makes our living situation uncomfortable. I value what we've built here, the friendship, the trust. I won't jeopardize that. My mind was reeling. Michael, steady, reserved, thoughtful Michael, was attracted to me. Had possibly been attracted to me for some time. And what did I feel? I'd appreciated his looks from the beginning in an objective way. The salt and pepper hair that suited him perfectly, the strong lines of his face, his tall, lean build. But I'd carefully kept any attraction contained, assuming he was straight, assuming he wouldn't welcome such thoughts from his much younger tenant. But beyond the physical, there was something else, a growing warmth whenever he entered a room, a comfort in his presence that felt increasingly like coming home. The way his rare smiles made my day better. The respect with which he treated my work, my opinions, my space. The quiet strength he carried beneath his reserve. Jamie? His voice broke through my thoughts. I have made you uncomfortable. I apologize. No, I said quickly. I'm not uncomfortable. I'm just processing. Of course. He started to rise. Perhaps we should wait. I reached out, catching his wrist. The contact sent a jolt through me. I'm attracted to you too. Have been for a while. But there are complications. He settled back into his chair, turning his wrist so that our hands were almost clasped. Such as? The age difference, for one. 19 years, he acknowledged. Significant, but not insurmountable, unless it bothers you. The landlord-tenant situation, for another. A legal formality that could be adjusted if necessary. I smiled despite myself. You have an answer for everything. Not everything. His expression grew serious. I don't know what this is between us, or what it could become. I don't have much experience with any of this. But I do know that when you're not here, the house feels empty in a way it never did before you arrived. The simple honesty of his admission moved me more than any grand declaration could have. I feel the same way, I admitted. When you're gone, I find myself waiting for you to come back. Not because I'm lonely, but because everything is better when you're here. His hand finally closed around mine fully, his touch warm and sure. So where does that leave us? Figuring it out together? I suggested. Slowly. He smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. I'd like that. We sat there by the fire, hands linked, the moment fragile and precious. I wasn't sure who moved first, but suddenly we were leaning toward each other, and then his lips were on mine, tentative at first, then with growing confidence. He tasted of chocolate and peppermint, and something uniquely him. When we parted, he looked slightly dazed, his usual composure beautifully disrupted. That was a good start, I finished for him, smiling. He laughed softly. Yes, a very good start. That night, we talked for hours about his marriage, about my past relationships, about the fears and hopes we both carried. We decided to take things slowly, to be mindful of the complexities, to be honest with each other above all else. When Evelyn returned the next day, she took one look at us at the breakfast table and broke into a knowing grin. "Finally," she said, helping herself to coffee. "I was about to lock you two in a room together." Michael choked on his toast. "Evelyn." "What?" The tension was getting ridiculous. She patted his shoulder as she passed. "Don't worry, Dad. Jamie's great. I approve." We're just started, unsure how to define what we were. "Figuring things out," Michael finished for me, his eyes meeting mine with quiet certainty. "Well, figure faster," she advised cheerfully. "Life's short, and you guys are cute together." And so we were, figuring things out day by day, learning each other's rhythms, sharing small intimacies, building something neither of us had expected when I answered that rental listing. 6 months later, we adjusted the lease, not to end it, but to formalize that I was now more than just a tenant. A year after that, Michael's sister helped us host a small gathering to celebrate our official partnership. Evelyn brought her new boyfriend and took far too many pictures of us looking, in her words, disgustingly happy. The house that had once felt too empty to Michael, too temporary to me, became truly home to both of us. I filled it with color and modern touches. He maintained its historical integrity. Together, we filled it with a kind of love that comes unexpectedly and takes root deeply. Sometimes I think about that first day, standing on his porch, desperately hoping for affordable housing and nothing more. How completely wrong I'd been about what I was really finding. How the listing should have read, "Room for rent in charming Craftsman, Queen Anne neighborhood. $950 per month, utilities included. Must love old houses, and the man who restored them."